5:45 p.m., which means it's time for BCTV's weekly media roundup, 5:45 Live. I'm tonight's host, Roland Boyden. On deck tonight, the police fire vote receives final ratification for real this time. A mock anthrax outbreak gives officials some practice. We'll get you new details on a rash of robberies in the area, plus plenty of municipal updates, including town garage construction drama in Jamaica, and a potential Act 46 lawsuit in Vernon, plus all that calendar coverage you've come to love so much, weather from BUHS TV News, and much more.
It's been said that your life can come down to a single moment. Some believe that the choice you make in that moment can change the course of your life forever. Others will tell you that your path was chosen for you long ago, that destiny has already made your choice. Is it your will that brought you here, or is it fate?
And with that, welcome back to this April 1st, or April Fool's Day edition of 5:45 Live. A look at some April Fool's footage from years past, including that Brattleboro rooftop base jumping cliff. All right, with that, into the headlines we go, and we'll start in Brattleboro, where the newly elected Brattleboro Select Board used their special organizational meeting this week, not just for the usual swearing-in ceremony, but also to vote in final approval for the police fire facilities upgrade project, including the now town meeting rep-backed police station relocation, which will move to Black Mountain Road in the current plan. And while Wednesday's vote carried a fair bit of finality to it as far as preventing interventions in the form of things like townwide referendum, town manager Peter Elwell was quick to point out that the time for public input has not gone by the wayside.
One thing that had greater urgency, and so instead of saving it for next Tuesday, we put on this evening's agenda, is asking you to formally authorize that we exercise the option and purchase 62 Black Mountain Road. And what gave that greater urgency is if we do not exercise that option before Friday of this week, if we don't do it by close of business tomorrow, then we'll need to extend the option period by 3 months. Well, beginning on April 1st, we would enter into the extended option period. And it would require another $10,000 payment by the town to the current owners, $5,000 of which would be applicable towards the ultimate purchase, but $5,000 of which would be a cost out of hand.
You can see that special Brattleboro Select Board organizational meeting, which includes the swearing in and that police fire final vote. It's from this past Wednesday, and it's available to stream at brattleboro.tv.org, and it'll show all this coming week. 2 clicks up the dial on our government and education sister channel, Channel 10. Now, speaking of the Brattleboro Select Board, they announced at town meeting that they were saving some money in the overall capital budget, thanks in part to the fact that they put away money to repair the Green St extension retaining wall overlooking Harmony parking lot, only to have the state come through with grants that meant the vast majority of the spending would come from the state level. So construction is going on all this week. We took our cameras and BCTV's aerial helicopter down there to take a look at some of the construction work going on down there. Moving on, it's not often that anthrax makes it into our headlines, but with the Vermont Department of Health's practice biohazard vaccine drill this week, that was the operative agent referenced in the test. The drill, which took place at the BAM's multi-purpose room, gave Department of Health officials a chance to see where the holes in their proposed procedure are, should a real biohazard breakout come the region's way, and it gave 545 Live correspondent Esla Areste a chance to document the process with this 545 Live special.
So we were practicing a distribution of antibiotics in the event that there were some kind of an exposure. The scenario that we used today, and this was an exercise, there was nothing, this was totally a practice for us, but we used a scenario where there was a biological anthrax exposure to a large portion of the population, and we were practicing quickly getting people through to receive antibiotics. We do them once a year. This year we'll have a second one that's a statewide drill, and that'll happen in July. If this were a real event, we would want to have everything working like clockwork. And so the way that you can, really have all your processes working very efficiently is to practice them.
Next up, Vernon/Guilford State Rep and Vernon School Board member Mike Hebert has filed a public records request to have tens of thousands of Act 46 related emails turned over after the longtime Vernon resident publicly attacked the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union's Act 46 Study Committee for not being transparent enough in their process or offering enough opportunity for public input as they attempt to help the region's schools navigate toward the accelerated merger of governing bodies as dictated by the state's highly controversial Act 46 legislation. Now, Hebert's claims have been rebutted by the WSESU Study Committee members, who've cited the fact that the committee has worked hard to hold their frequent meetings in a variety of locations across every one of the towns in the Union. And while it's the same plug I myself make on every 545 Live episode, it's also relevant to this story to point out that every single minute of every single WSCSU Act 46 Study Committee meeting can be watched on BCTV's website, brattleboro.tv.org, where we also provide annotated clickable agendas that allow viewers to hone in on specific sections of the meeting as well. In addition to the ability to review, this also provides the fact that the meetings are open to the public. Now, Hebert has not made clear what he thinks is lurking in the requested emails that is not available to the public through the coverage of the meetings themselves, but Study Committee Chair Alice Laughlin has stated that all the committee work has been dictated by the state's guidelines for the undertaking, something she told the Commons in an article this week she feels is, quote, a very democratic process. Now, speaking of the democratic process, members of the Jamaica Select Board opted earlier this year to send to townwide vote their huge decision to approve capital expenses for construction of a new town garage. That's so that all the town's residents could weigh in that townwide vote. Something that yielded a yes vote earlier this spring, only to have some residents second-guess the decision at the Select Board's regular meeting this past Monday, asking the town, in essence, to redo the townwide vote after providing more public information on the garage project above and beyond what's already been available by attending or watching the board's regular meetings dating through this past year. Now, that's a proposed backtrack of sorts that members of the board were none too happy to have to discuss at Monday's meeting.
The next time that we have a time when we can vote to begin the building committee is going to be in 3 weeks. Meanwhile, how much is going to be done? There really should be nothing done until that planning to the building committee meets.
You can see that full meeting from March 28th from the Jamaica Select Board at the Jamaica Select Board landing page under the Meetings tab at brattleboro.tv.org. And of course, it'll show this coming week on BCTV Channel 10, as all our recent government programming does. Next up, this week's top theft headline in the region was not a bank robbery, jewel heist, or priceless art theft, but rather a massive maple syrup heist, as an unknown suspect made off with over $3,000 worth of pure maple syrup from the Dwight Miller Orchard farm stand in Dummerston late last week, leaving the hardworking Millers short more than 60 gallons of syrup, which is the equivalent of 6,000 gallons of raw sap to have to collect. Police are urging residents to keep an eye out for unauthorized sales of Dwight Miller Orchard labeled maple syrup in the region, as the criminals involved would need to sell off their spoils in order to convert the robbery into cash, unless of course their plan is simply to set themselves up with a lifetime supply of pancake breakfasts. Now, speaking of robberies, Brattleboro police are urging residents to lock their cars and take valuables with them when parking downtown, after a string of over 10 different car robberies were reported within the last week. Something Brat PD Captain Mark Kerrigan says experience suggests are the work of one individual or group rather than isolated incidents. No arrests have been reported in conjunction with this string of robberies as of yet. Now, speaking of Brattleboro police, as you can see, we're really working the segue this time with the speaking ofs. Members of the local police force will join law enforcement officers from agencies across the region to compete for the title of Best Cook as part of the Safe Place of Windham County fundraiser entitled Ken Cops Cook, which is slated to bring to the American Legion here on Main Street a next Top Chef-style bake-off that will ultimately bestow one talented cop-turned-chef with the coveted gold spatula and raise money for Safe Place, which works with cases of trauma and abuse involving children all at the same time. The event is set to kick off at 5:30 p.m. this coming April 16th, which is a Saturday.
What we do is we coordinate services for children and families who have been victims of child abuse. So we have kids and their families come into the center right at the beginning after a report has been made, and we coordinate services with our local DCF office, with local law enforcement, with victims advocacy services, mental health, medical evaluations, to really make sure that kids are getting all of the services that they need after a report has been made.
That clip there, part of a half-hour BCTV Open Studio hosted by WKVT's Chris Lenoir, where he talked to folks about the Safe Place mission, what they are going to use these funds for, what they see as their future, and then, of course, all the details about the specifics of the Ken Cops Cook event, including what some of the rivalries are as far as which agency thinks they have the best cook and cop in town. You can find that full interview at BrattleboroTV.org. And just to keep the speaking of style segues going here, speaking of Chris Lenoir, he and fellow KVTite Peter Fishcase were at Brooks Memorial Library yesterday to host a 2-hour live on-radio community forum event on the topic of mental health, with panelists from NAMI, HCRS, Brat PD, Rescue, the Brattleboro Retreat, and many others, joined by lively input from the audience.
My name is Chris Lenoir, and I'm joined by my WKVT colleague Fish to moderate this conversation, along with a panel of guests to talk about the mental health-related challenges facing our community on a number of levels, and hopefully shed light on available resources.
Of course, BCTV was also there to cover that live WKVT radio forum at Brooks Memorial Library. The video from that is now available to stream at BrattleboroTV.org, and it'll show all this week on Channel 8, our public channel, the one you're watching right now, for 5:45 live. And with that, it's time to launch into our BCTV video calendar, which is all sponsored by the Brattleboro Savings and Loan, as their contributions to BCTV each year help fund our weekly look at area upcoming events. And we'll start by noting that it is a first Friday of the month, being April 1st here, which means it's Gallery Walk here in Brattleboro, and that means events all over the downtown region, out the West Brattleboro region, up Putney Road, all over. And Gallery Walk does have its own website, gallerywalk.org. We can find out all about all these events and what might suit your family the most, or you can just come to downtown. It's kicking off right now as we speak, and it'll run through the evening, so plenty to check out there. From there on the calendar, we'll head north to Putney, where Cheryl Wheeler returns to Next Stage Arts in downtown Putney tonight at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are available at the door. You can find out more details at nextstagearts.org. And we'll move on now to Saturday night, as the annual Williamsville Newfane Talent Show gets set to hit the Williamsville Town Grange, which is on Dover Road just off Route 30. The whole event kicks off at 7 p.m. and we'll see over 40 local performers as part of the talent show. It's going to be a benefit for the hall and also for the Leland and Gray players. And BCTV will be there to cover footage as we were last year. You're looking at some of last year's footage here, courtesy of BCTV producer Russ Graybeck. Pretty exciting stuff. All right, that does it for our calendar. Just a few things to wrap up here on this edition of 545 Live, including a look at this weekend's weather. This is all courtesy of the high school's morning news advisory broadcast crew. BUHS TV, what's this weekend's weather look like, guys?
But thankfully, it's going to warm up the following Monday with a high of 39 and a low of 22. Partially cloudy, not unlike today.
All right, that does it for another edition of 545 Live. Thanks for checking in with me. Be sure to check back in with us next week right here on BCTV Comcast Cable Channel 8 at 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, thanks for watching.